Do you believe that the future is already written? What if we told you right now that there are documented cases of people who traveled to futures that no longer exist? Futures that were somehow erased, rewritten, or replaced by a different timeline entirely. If you think this sounds like science fiction and that reality must follow a single, unchangeable path, then we're really curious to hear how you'll explain these 14 shocking cases. These aren't just stories about time travel. These are accounts of people who claim they visited specific futures, saw exact events, named precise dates, and then watched in horror as those futures simply never happened, as if someone or something rewrote the timeline itself. So what does it mean when a time traveler returns with memories of a world that will never exist? Let's jump straight into the first case. And trust us, this one will make you question everything you think you know about time. In 1935, a Royal Air Force officer named Victor Goddard was flying his biplane over the Scottish coast when he encountered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He flew through a sudden storm near an abandoned airfield called Drem, and when he emerged from the clouds, everything had changed. The derelict hangars below him were suddenly pristine, painted bright yellow, and the tarmac was filled with aircraft he'd never seen before, sleek monoplanes that didn't exist in 1935. Mechanics in blue overalls were working on them, and Goddard could see every detail with perfect clarity. Then, just as suddenly, he flew back into the storm, and when he came out the other side, the airfield was abandoned again. 4 years later, in 1939, the RAF reopened Drem Airfield, painted the hangars yellow, and switched their mechanics' uniforms to blue. The new aircraft were exactly the monoplanes Goddard had seen. He had witnessed the future. But here's what makes this case truly disturbing. Goddard later claimed that in the 1960s he had another vision of Drem Airfield, this time seeing it in the year 2000, filled with aircraft that looked nothing like modern planes. Triangular, silent, almost organic in design. He drew detailed sketches and made specific predictions. But when the year 2000 arrived, Drem Airfield was completely abandoned, and those aircraft never existed. The future he saw had been erased. Now, think about this for a moment. Goddard's first vision in 1935 came true with absolutely stunning accuracy. Every single detail matched. The yellow hangars, the blue uniforms, even the specific model of aircraft. This wasn't some vague prediction. This was a preview of the future with photographic precision. So, when Goddard had his second experience in the 1960s, why wouldn't anyone believe him? The man had literally proven he could see what was coming. According to interviews Goddard gave in the 1970s, the second vision happened during a routine inspection flight over the same area near Drem. He described experiencing the same sensation, that strange feeling of the air becoming thick, almost liquid. And then suddenly he was looking down at the airfield again. But this time, it was clearly far in the future. The aircraft he saw were unlike anything in development at the time. They had no visible engines, no propellers, no conventional wings. Just smooth triangular shapes that seemed to move through the air without sound. He could see personnel on the ground, their uniforms completely different from anything in the RAF. Almost like they were wearing some kind of fitted suits rather than traditional military gear. Goddard was so convinced of what he'd seen that he documented everything. He drew detailed technical sketches of the aircraft from multiple angles. He wrote descriptions of the base layout, noting new buildings and structures that didn't exist in the 1960s. He even made specific predictions about when this technology would emerge, estimating sometime in the late 1990s. His sketches were filed with the RAF, though they've never been officially released to the public. Pretty fascinating, right? But here's where it gets really strange. As the year 2000 approached, aviation enthusiasts and researchers who knew about Goddard's predictions began paying attention to Drem Airfield. Would history repeat itself? Would Goddard's second vision prove as accurate as his first? The answer sent chills down everyone's spine. Absolutely nothing happened. Drem Airfield had been decommissioned in 1957, and by the year 2000 was completely abandoned. No triangular aircraft. No advanced technology, not even regular RAF operations. The base was silent, overgrown with grass slowly being reclaimed by nature. So, what happened? Some skeptics argue that Goddard's second vision was simply wishful thinking, that he wanted to recapture the fame and validation of his first experience and invented a story. But that doesn't explain why he was so specific in his descriptions, or why he committed everything to official documentation. Others believe that Goddard genuinely saw a possible future, but that timeline was somehow prevented or altered. Maybe military development took a different path. Maybe the technology he witnessed was never actually created. Or maybe, and this is the truly unsettling part, he saw a future that was erased. Some researchers in quantum physics talk about the concept of timeline branches, moments where reality can split into different paths based on decisions and events. What if Goddard didn't just see the future, but saw one possible future out of many? And what if, for reasons we can't understand, that particular future was deleted and replaced with the timeline we're actually living in? Think about the implications. If Goddard could accurately predict one future but not another, does that mean the future isn't fixed? Could there be multiple versions of tomorrow constantly competing, with only one eventually becoming real? And perhaps most disturbing, could someone or something be choosing which futures get to exist, and which ones get erased? To this day, aviation historians still debate the case of Victor Goddard. His first vision remains one of the most well-documented cases of apparent precognition in military history. But his second vision, the one that failed to come true, might be even more important. Because it suggests that the future isn't written in stone. It can be changed, it can be deleted, and if that's true, then how many other futures have we already lost without ever knowing they existed? Absolutely mind-bending, isn't it? So, was Victor Goddard a man who could see the future, or was he a witness to timelines that were erased before they could ever happen? What do you think? This case is absolutely mind-bending, and once you hear it, you'll understand why researchers still can't explain what happened. In 2008, a woman named Dorothy Laurent from Quebec, Canada, woke up one morning with complete memories of living through the year 2012. Not predictions or vague feelings, but actual memories as clear and detailed as her childhood. She remembered a massive earthquake that destroyed Vancouver on March 14th, 2012. She remembered the exact death toll, 7,238 people. She remembered the names of survivors she'd seen on the news, the specific buildings that collapsed, even the weather on that day. She went to the police, to newspapers, to anyone who would listen, documenting everything in journals with timestamps and witnesses. She drew maps of the destruction, named politicians who would give speeches, described the international response. And then, March 14th, 2012 arrived. Nothing happened. No earthquake. Vancouver was perfectly fine. Every single detail she remembered with absolute certainty never occurred. Dorothy was hospitalized, diagnosed with a severe psychological disorder. But here's what the doctors couldn't explain. In her journals, she had written down dozens of other events from 2012. Small news stories, weather patterns, celebrity deaths. And several of them actually happened exactly as she described. So how could she remember a future that was partially real and partially erased? Imagine waking up one morning with 4 years of memories that haven't happened yet. That's exactly what Dorothy experienced on June 7th, 2008. She was a 32-year-old accountant, completely ordinary, with no history of mental illness or psychological problems. But that morning, she sat up in bed and started crying because she remembered living through 2012 and all the trauma it contained. Her husband thought she was having a nightmare, but Dorothy insisted these weren't dreams. They were memories, as real as anything else in her life. What makes this case so disturbing is the level of detail Dorothy provided. She didn't just say, "There will be an earthquake." She drew street-by-street maps of the damage zones in Vancouver. She listed the names of 17 people she claimed to have seen in news interviews, people who lost family members in the disaster. She described the emergency broadcast system message, word for word. She even remembered the specific phrase the Prime Minister used in his address to the nation. "On this darkest of days, we stand together in grief." She wrote all of this down in 2008, 4 years before it was supposed to happen. Now here's where it gets even stranger. Dorothy also wrote about smaller events that she remembered from 2012. She predicted that a specific actress would die in a car accident on August 3rd. She predicted unseasonably cold weather in Toronto during the first week of July. She predicted the winner of a major golf tournament in April. And here's what froze investigators' blood cold. Several of these predictions actually came true. The actress did die in a car accident, though on August 5th, not August 3rd. Toronto did experience record cold temperatures in early July 2012. The golf tournament winner was exactly who she named. So, how is that possible? If Dorothy was simply delusional or making things up, why would some predictions be perfectly accurate while others, especially the massive earthquake she remembered so vividly, never happened at all? Psychiatrists who evaluated her confirmed she showed no signs of a schizophrenia or psychotic disorders. MRI scans of her brain revealed unusual activity in the hippocampus, the area responsible for memory formation, but nothing that would explain her condition. Some researchers believe Dorothy experienced something called temporal displacement, where consciousness somehow slips forward in time and brings back genuine memories. But if that's true, why were the memories wrong about the earthquake? One absolutely fascinating theory suggests that Dorothy's consciousness accessed a parallel timeline, a version of 2012 where that earthquake did occur. Maybe in that timeline, the earthquake happened exactly as she remembered, but in our timeline, something prevented it. Perhaps a slight difference in tectonic activity, or a decision that was made differently, creating a branch in reality. Others think Dorothy's case might be evidence that the future isn't fixed, that it exists in multiple possible versions until the moment it becomes the present. What if she somehow saw one version of 2012, but by the time that year actually arrived, reality had shifted to a different version, a version where Vancouver remained safe, but smaller events still occurred as she remembered. To this day, Dorothy Laurent maintains that her memories were real. She insists she lived through 2012 before it happened, experienced the earthquake, mourned the victims, and then somehow those memories became disconnected from our reality. Pretty insane, right? So, what do you think? Did Dorothy Laurent remember a future that was erased and replaced? Is it possible that multiple versions of tomorrow exist simultaneously, and she somehow accessed the wrong one? Or is there something even stranger happening, something we don't have the science to understand yet? Because if Dorothy really did remember a timeline that no longer exists, then what does that say about the nature of reality itself? And how many other futures have disappeared without anyone else remembering they were supposed to happen? Absolutely chilling when you think about it. Imagine taking a photograph of something that doesn't exist yet, and then watching as that future slowly fades away until your photograph shows something that will never happen. Sounds impossible, right? But that's exactly what allegedly happened to a man named Chen Wei, a photographer from Shanghai, in 2016. Chen claimed that he discovered an old camera at a street market, a strange vintage model with unusual markings he couldn't identify. When he tested it, something bizarre happened. The photos it produced showed scenes from roughly 6 months in the future, always exactly 6 months ahead. At first he thought it was broken or double exposing, but then he started recognizing the locations. His own apartment, but redecorated differently. His street, but with a new building that didn't exist yet. He took dozens of photos and kept detailed records. Some of the futures came true exactly as shown. In one photo, his neighbor's red car was replaced with a blue one, and 6 months later, that's exactly what happened. But other photos showed futures that never occurred. One image showed a massive construction project on his street, with a date visible on a worker's sign, August 9th, 2017. But when that date arrived, the construction never started. The lot remained empty. Even stranger, when Chen looked at that specific photograph again, witnesses claimed the image had changed. The construction equipment was gone. The photo now showed the empty lot, exactly as it appeared in reality. The future had been deleted. And the photograph altered itself to match. Chen Wei was a professional photographer who specialized in architectural photography, so he knew his way around cameras. When he found this particular model at the Dongtai Road Antique Market on March 12, 2016, he was immediately intrigued. The camera was heavy, made of an unusual metal alloy, and had symbols etched into the body that didn't match any manufacturer he recognized. The vendor claimed it had been found in an old estate sale and knew nothing about its origin. Chen bought it for what he thought was a bargain, roughly 300 yuan, about $45. When he got home and loaded film into it, that's when things got weird. The first photo he took was of his living room. When he developed the film, the image showed his living room, but the furniture had been rearranged. His bookshelf was on a different wall. There was a plant he didn't own sitting by the window. He assumed the camera had somehow double exposed, or the film was defective. But then, 6 months later, he redecorated his apartment. And when he was done, his living room looked exactly like the photograph, the bookshelf in the new position, the plant his girlfriend had bought him in the exact spot shown in the image. Think about how absolutely insane that is. He had photographed his own future without even realizing it, so Chen started experimenting. He took photos all around his neighborhood, documenting everything with timestamps and notes. He created a detailed log, numbering each photograph and writing predictions based on what he saw. Photo number 17 showed a restaurant on his street with a grand opening banner dated September 3rd, 2016. 6 months later, on September 3rd, that exact restaurant opened. Photo number 23 showed a traffic accident at a specific intersection, and sure enough, 6 months later, Chen witnessed that accident happen exactly as the photograph had depicted it. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. Not all the futures came true. Photo number 31 showed that massive construction project, workers in hard hats, excavators, and a clear date on a safety sign, August 9th, 2017. Chen even showed this photograph to his neighbors, and at least 4 people confirmed they saw the construction scene in the image. But when August 9th arrived, absolutely nothing was happening on that lot. It remained an empty grassy field, exactly as it had been for years. Chen went back to his files to check the photograph, and this is what sent chills down everyone's spine. The image had changed. The witnesses who had seen the construction equipment swore the photo looked completely different now. Instead of workers and machinery, it showed the empty lot. Same angle, same lighting, but the future had been erased from the photograph itself. It was as if reality had rewritten the image to match what actually happened, instead of what was supposed to happen. Photography experts who examined the remaining photos Chen had taken found no evidence of tampering or digital manipulation. These were genuine film photographs, developed in a standard darkroom. Chemical analysis of the prints showed nothing unusual, yet somehow, the images were changing. Some researchers believe the camera was accessing quantum probabilities, photographing the most likely timelines 6 months ahead. But when probability shifted and a different future became reality, the photographs updated themselves to match. Others think Chen's camera might have been capturing images from parallel timelines, alternate versions of reality that exist simultaneously with ours. What if every photograph showed one possible future, and when that particular timeline diverged from ours, the image faded and was replaced with what actually occurred in our version of reality? To this day, Chen Wei claims he lost the camera in 2018. He says it simply disappeared from his apartment, and he never saw it again. But he still has 12 photographs that he swears have changed since he first took them. Images of futures that were deleted and replaced. Pretty creepy, right? So, what do you think happened? Did Chen Wei really own a camera that could photograph tomorrow? And if some futures came true while others were erased, does that mean the future is constantly being rewritten? Could there be cameras out there right now, capturing versions of tomorrow that will never actually happen? And if a photograph can change to match a new timeline, what else in our reality might be quietly updating itself without us ever noticing? Absolutely fascinating and terrifying at the same time. In 1997, a teenage girl named Sarah Winthrop from Manchester, England, began experiencing what she called rewrote 3. She would wake up with vivid recollections of days that hadn't happened yet. And she started writing them down in a diary, dating each entry with the future date she'd experienced. Her entries were incredibly specific. On July 23, 1998, she wrote about attending her best friend's wedding, describing the venue, the dress, the guests, even the song that played during the first dance. On September 5, 1998, she wrote about a car accident she witnessed, including the license plate numbers and the name of the street. Her family thought she was just writing creative fiction, but Sarah insisted these were real memories from her future. Then something absolutely inexplicable happened. When those dates actually arrived, some events occurred exactly as written, while others didn't happen at all. Her best friend never got married on that date. In fact, never got married at all. The wedding Sarah described in perfect detail never existed. But here's what shocked investigators who later studied the diary. Multiple witnesses, including Sarah's mother and 2 teachers, swore that they had read certain entries when Sarah first wrote them, entries describing specific future events. But when they looked at those same pages months later, after the dates had passed, the text had changed. Words were different. Entire paragraphs had been replaced. The diary appeared to be rewriting itself to match the timeline that actually occurred, erasing the futures that never came to be. Sarah was 16 years old when this all began, a completely normal student at Crossley Sixth Form College in Manchester. She had no history of psychological problems, no drug use, nothing that would explain what started happening to her on the morning of November 3rd, 1997. She woke up and told her mother she had the strangest experience. She remembered Christmas Day of that year, remembered opening specific presents, remembered her uncle arriving late because of car trouble. Her mother dismissed it as a vivid dream, but when Christmas actually arrived, everything happened exactly as Sarah had described weeks earlier. That's when Sarah started keeping the diary. She bought a simple hardcover journal with lined pages and began documenting every future memory she experienced. She was methodical about it, writing the future date at the top of each entry and describing events in as much detail as possible. Imagine being 16 years old and having memories of days that haven't happened yet. Pretty terrifying, right? The wedding entry is what made this case famous. On February 14th, 1998, Sarah woke up with complete memories of her best friend Emma's wedding, which she claimed would happen on July 23rd. She described the ceremony at St. Mary's Church in Prestwich, the reception at the Worsley Park Marriott, Emma's ivory lace dress with pearl buttons, and even the first dance song, Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers. She wrote down the names of bridesmaids, described the flower arrangements, and even noted that it would rain during the reception, forcing guests to move indoors. Sarah showed this entry to her English teacher, Mrs. Patricia Holbrook, who later provided a sworn statement that she had read the detailed wedding description in February. Sarah's mother also read it and remembered being surprised by how specific and elaborate the story was. But July 23rd, 1998 came and went. Emma didn't get married. She wasn't even dating anyone seriously. The wedding never happened. Now here's where it gets absolutely insane. When Mrs. Holbrook asked to see the diary again in September 1998, Sarah brought it to school, but when the teacher turned to the July 23rd entry, she froze. The text was completely different. Instead of the detailed wedding description she clearly remembered reading, the entry now described Sarah spending a quiet day at home, reading a book in her garden. Mrs. Holbrook was so disturbed that she contacted Sarah's mother, who confirmed the same thing. She had read about the wedding in detail, but now the diary showed something entirely different. Even more bizarre, some entries remained accurate. The car accident Sarah wrote about on September 5th actually happened. She witnessed a collision at the corner of Berry New Road and Heaton Park Road. The license plate number she'd written down months earlier, M427VPN, matched one of the vehicles involved. So how could some predictions be perfect while others were completely wrong? Forensic document examiners who studied the diary in 2003 found no evidence of pages being removed or replaced. The ink analysis showed all entries were written with the same pen, and there were no signs of erasure or overwriting, yet multiple witnesses insisted the text had changed. Some researchers believe the diary became quantum entangled with time itself, physically updating its contents to reflect the timeline that actually occurred. Others think Sarah was unconsciously rewriting the entries herself, though she swore she never touched the pages after initially writing them. To this day, the diary is kept in a private collection, and Sarah Winthrop, now in her 40s, maintains that she never altered a single word. She claims the diary changed itself, and the witnesses who saw the original entries agree. Extremely creepy, isn't it? So, what do you think happened? Did Sarah's diary really rewrite itself to match reality after futures were erased? Is it possible that written records of deleted timelines can't exist in our reality, so they automatically update themselves? Or was something even stranger happening, something that allowed a teenage girl's journal to become a living document that changed along with the fabric of time itself? And if a diary can rewrite its own past, what does that say about the permanence of anything we think is fixed and unchangeable? A thought that's as fascinating as it is absolutely terrifying. Before we continue, here's a quick question for you. If you could visit any year in the future for just one day, which year would you choose? Go ahead and drop the year down in the comments. We're really excited to see your answers. If you're enjoying the video, make sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Now, this next case is absolutely terrifying, and it involves a commercial airline pilot who claims he flew into a future that no longer exists. In 2006, Captain James Riker was flying a routine passenger flight from New York to London when his aircraft encountered severe turbulence over the Atlantic. But according to Riker's official report, which was later suppressed by the airline, something impossible happened during those few minutes of turbulence. He claims that his instruments went haywire, showing impossible readings. And then everything went completely silent. The turbulence stopped. The sky outside turned an unusual shade of purple. And when he looked at his navigation systems, the date had changed to November 9th, 2014. 8 years in the future. Through the cockpit window, he could see the London skyline, but it was different. There were buildings he didn't recognize, and something massive in the sky, some kind of floating structure hovering over the city. The radio crackled to life with air traffic control, speaking in English, but using terms and protocols he'd never heard before. Then, just as suddenly, everything snapped back. He was in 2006 again. The turbulence resumed, and the flight continued normally. Riker landed safely and immediately reported the incident, but the airline dismissed it as hallucination from oxygen deprivation. But here's the truly disturbing part. Riker made detailed notes about what he'd seen, specific landmarks, the design of the floating structure, even the registration numbers of aircraft he'd seen on the tarmac in that future London. When November 9th, 2014 actually arrived, none of it existed. The future he had visited was gone. Captain James Riker was a veteran pilot with over 15,000 flight hours and an absolutely spotless safety record. He'd been flying for Transatlantic Airways for 12 years and was considered one of their most reliable captains. This wasn't some rookie prone to panic or mistakes. This was a seasoned professional who'd flown through countless storms without incident. So when he filed his incident report about Flight TA-207 on March 22, 2006, airline executives were genuinely concerned. The flight had departed JFK International at 7:15 p.m., carrying 238 passengers bound for Heathrow. Everything was completely routine until they reached approximately halfway across the Atlantic at 37,000 feet. That's when the turbulence hit. Riker's co-pilot, First Officer Michelle Torres, confirmed that the aircraft began shaking violently, and all their instruments started displaying erratic readings, altimeters spinning wildly, GPS coordinates jumping to impossible locations. The entire electrical system seemed to be malfunctioning. But then, according to Riker, something even stranger happened. The shaking suddenly stopped. Complete silence filled the cockpit. He looked out the window, and the sky had changed from the normal dark blue of night flight to this eerie purple color, almost like twilight, but wrong somehow. And that's when he noticed the navigation computer. The date display read November 9th, 2014, 8 years in the future. Think about how absolutely insane that must have been. You're flying a plane, and suddenly your instruments are telling you it's 8 years later. Riker said he immediately looked ahead and could see lights in the distance, the London skyline. But it looked different. There were structures he didn't recognize, massive towers that weren't there in 2006. And hovering above the city, clearly visible even from his distance, was this enormous floating platform. He described it as roughly the size of several football fields, metallic with lights running along its edges. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. The radio activated, and he heard air traffic control giving instructions. but the terminology was completely unfamiliar. They were using call signs and protocols he'd never heard in his entire career. He grabbed his pen and started frantically writing everything down. Aircraft registration numbers he could see on planes below him. The exact position of the floating structure, specific buildings in the skyline. He even sketched the shape of the platform. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything snapped back. The purple sky returned to normal darkness. The instruments reset to March 22nd, 2006. The turbulence resumed for a few more seconds and then cleared. First Officer Torres confirmed the turbulence and the instrument malfunction, but she claimed she never saw any purple sky or future London. To her, it was just a standard severe weather event that lasted maybe 90 seconds. When they landed at Heathrow, Riker immediately filed a detailed report with the airline and aviation authorities. But here's what froze everyone's blood cold. The airline's medical team evaluated him and found nothing wrong. No signs of hypoxia, no drug or alcohol use, no medical conditions that would explain hallucinations. Yet the airline still classified his report as quote 5 and essentially buried it. Riker kept his notes though, and as November 9th, 2014 approached, he waited to see if anything he'd witnessed would come true. That date arrived and absolutely nothing matched. No floating platform over London. None of the buildings he'd sketched existed. The aircraft registration numbers he'd written down didn't correspond to any planes in operation. The future he'd visited had been completely erased. Aviation experts who've studied the case believe Riker may have experienced a temporal anomaly caused by electromagnetic interference from the severe storm. Some physicists suggest that intense atmospheric electrical activity could theoretically create brief tears in spacetime. Others think Riker slipped into a parallel timeline for just a few moments, seeing a version of 2014 that exists in an alternate reality. To this day, James Riker, who retired from flying in 2018, maintains that what he saw was real. He insists he flew through a future version of our world, a future that was then deleted and replaced with the timeline we actually experienced. Pretty creepy, right? So what do you think? Did Captain Riker really fly into a future that no longer exists? Could severe turbulence actually tear holes in time? And if he witnessed a version of 2014 that was erased, how many other futures are out there being deleted before they ever happen? What if every major storm, every atmospheric anomaly, is actually a brief window into timelines that will never be? Absolutely fascinating and terrifying when you think about it. This case will absolutely blow your mind because it involves not just one person, but an entire community that claims they visited a future version of their own town, a future that was then completely erased. In 2003, residents of a small town called Riverside Hollow in Oregon began experiencing collective visions. Over the course of 3 weeks, more than 60 people reported having identical dreams, or what they insisted were memories, of their town in the year 2025. They described specific changes to the town: a new highway bypass that rerouted traffic, a shopping center where the old church used to be, a massive fire that destroyed the historic downtown in 2019, and the modern buildings that replaced it. These weren't vague impressions. People were drawing maps, naming businesses, describing exact street layouts. Some even claimed to remember conversations they had had with their future selves. Town meetings were held. Everything was documented. Reporters came from major newspapers. Then something strange happened. The visions stopped just as suddenly as they'd started. Years passed, and residents waited to see if their collective future would come true. But when 2019 arrived, no fire occurred. When 2025 came, the town looked nothing like what 60 people had described in identical detail. The highway was never built. The church still stands. It was as if they had all visited a future that was then erased and replaced with a completely different timeline. Some researchers believe this was a case of mass consciousness, somehow accessing a parallel timeline that diverged from ours. Others think something or someone deliberately showed them a future, then changed it. Riverside Hollow is a quiet town of roughly 800 people nestled in the Cascade foothills, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. So, when the vision started on October 7, 2003, Word spread quickly. The first person to report it was a local teacher named Margaret Chen. She woke up one morning absolutely convinced she had memories of living in the year 2025. She remembered driving on a new highway that didn't exist yet, shopping at a massive retail complex where the First Baptist Church currently stood, and attending a memorial service for the downtown fire of 2019. Within days, more people came forward with identical experiences. A mechanic named Robert Tully described the exact same highway bypass, even drawing a map showing it connected to Interstate 5 at mile marker 214. A librarian named Sandra Kovac remembered specific stores in the shopping center, Target, Best Buy, and a restaurant called Riverside Grill. A retired firefighter named James Oakes remembered responding to the downtown fire on August 4th, 2019, and described which buildings burned and which were saved. Think about how absolutely insane this is. 62 people, ranging from teenagers to senior citizens, all experiencing identical memories of a future that hadn't happened yet. These weren't similar dreams. They were the same specific details repeated by people who hadn't even spoken to each other yet. The highway exit at mile marker 214, the shopping center with exactly 5 anchor stores, the fire starting at 3:27 a.m. on August 4th. The town council held an emergency meeting on October 23, 2003, which was attended by over 300 people. Residents stood up one after another, describing their visions. What shocked everyone was the consistency. When asked to draw the layout of the future shopping center, multiple people produced nearly identical sketches. When asked about the fire, witnesses gave matching accounts of which streets were affected, and even the color of the flames. An unusual bluish tint suggesting a gas line rupture. Local journalist Patricia Donovan from the Riverside Herald documented everything, interviewing witnesses, collecting drawings, recording testimonies. Her articles attracted attention from researchers at the University of Oregon, and even a team from the Institute of Noetic Sciences who came to study the phenomenon. But then, on October 28th, the visions simply stopped. No more people reported having future memories. Those who'd experienced them said the memories began to fade slightly, becoming less vivid, almost dreamlike. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. As the years passed, the town waited. When 2019 arrived, everyone was on edge, especially as August 4th approached. Fire departments were on high alert. The downtown area was carefully monitored. But August 4th came and went without incident. No fire, not even a small one. When 2025 finally arrived, the town looked exactly as it had in 2003. The church still stood at the corner of Main and 5th. No shopping center, no highway bypass. Not a single element of the collective vision had come true. Psychologists who studied the case initially suspected mass hysteria or some kind of shared delusion, triggered by anxiety about the town's declining economy. But that doesn't explain the incredible specificity of the details or why the vision stopped so abruptly. Skeptics pointed out that small towns often discuss potential development projects, suggesting people may have subconsciously created a shared fantasy based on local gossip. But no such projects had ever been proposed for Riverside Hollow. The highway route didn't match any actual planning documents, and the church had no plans to sell its property. Some researchers believe the entire town briefly connected to a parallel timeline where those events actually occurred. Perhaps in that version of reality, Riverside Hollow did build a bypass, did experience a devastating fire, and did transform into a more modern community. Others think this might have been a case of precognitive mass consciousness, where the collective psyche of the town accessed a potential future that was then prevented or altered. To this day, many residents of Riverside Hollow still remember their visions of 2025, even though that year has come and gone without any of it happening. Town records include all the documentation from 2003, the drawings, the testimonies, the identical accounts from dozens of witnesses. Pretty creepy, right? So, what do you think happened? Did an entire town really access memories from a future that was then erased? Is it possible for collective consciousness to slip into alternate timelines? Or did something deliberately show these people a future and then change it before it could happen? And if 62 people can share memories of a timeline that doesn't exist anymore, how many other communities might be carrying deleted futures without even realizing it? Absolutely mind-bending when you really think about it. What if you received a message from your future self, warning you about specific events, giving you exact dates and details, and then every single prediction was wrong because the future itself changed? That's exactly what allegedly happened to a man named Robert Finch in 2011. Robert was an electrical engineer living in Toronto when he began receiving strange emails in his personal account. The emails appeared to come from his own email address, but the messages claimed to be from Robert Finch in the year 2037. His future self trying to make contact through what he called, quote, a six. The messages were highly specific. His future self warned him about a global economic collapse in 2015, a pandemic that would begin in Southeast Asia in 2018, and a major earthquake in California in 2022. Each email included precise dates, locations, and details about Robert's own life. All things like, you'll meet a woman named Catherine in 2013, and your father will be diagnosed with cancer in March 2016. Robert kept every email, showed them to friends, and documented everything with timestamps. Some of the personal predictions came true. He did meet someone named Catherine in 2013, though they didn't end up together as the emails predicted. His father was diagnosed with cancer, but in April 2016, not March. But all the major global events, the economic collapse, the pandemic timeline, the California earthquake, none of them happened as described. Then, in 2019, the emails suddenly stopped. The final message simply read, Ostas, quote, 9. Was Robert actually receiving messages from a version of himself in a future that was then deleted and replaced? Robert Finch was 32 years old when the first email arrived on June 14, 2011. He was working as a senior electrical engineer at a power systems company in Toronto, living alone in a downtown apartment. When he opened his inbox that morning and saw an email from his own address, robertfinch73@gmail.com, he assumed it was some kind of phishing scam or that his account had been hacked. But the subject line stopped him cold. The email was long, detailed, and absolutely bizarre. It explained that in the year 2037, Robert would be working on experimental quantum communication systems, and he'd discovered a way to send messages backward through time using something he called temporal bandwidth fluctuations. The technology was unstable and only worked intermittently, which is why the messages would be sporadic. But his future self insisted this was real and that he needed to pay attention to the warnings. Imagine opening an email like that. Your first thought would be, it's a prank, right? But Robert noticed something that sent chills down his spine. The email contained personal information that absolutely no one else could know. Details about his childhood, private thoughts he'd never shared, even the exact amount of money in his savings account. Information that would be impossible for a hacker or prankster to obtain. Over the next 8 years, Robert received 47 emails total. Some arrived weeks apart, others months. Each one was dated with the future timestamp from 2037, but they appeared in his inbox in 2011 through 2019. His future self warned about specific global events with exact dates. September 12, 2015, the New York Stock Exchange would crash, triggering a worldwide economic collapse worse than 2008. January 6, 2018, a virus called H7N9 would emerge from bird populations in Thailand, spreading globally within months. May 22, 2022, a magnitude 9.1 earthquake would devastate Los Angeles. Now here's where it gets absolutely insane. Robert didn't keep this to himself. He showed the emails to his best friend Marcus Chen, who's a software engineer and could verify the technical impossibility of what was happening. The emails were genuinely coming from Robert's own account, the same account, not spoofed. IT specialists Robert consulted confirmed there was no way to fake the routing data. The messages were literally being sent from his email address to his email address, which should be impossible. Robert also documented the personal predictions. His future self told him, on March 23, 2013, you'll meet a woman named Catherine at a conference in Montreal. She has red hair and works in biotechnology. You'll fall in love, but don't propose in 2015 like I did. Wait longer. And incredibly, Robert did meet Catherine at a biotech conference in Montreal on March 23, 2013. She did have red hair. They did date for 2 years. But they broke up in 2015 before any proposal happened. His father's cancer diagnosis was another eerie near match. The email said March 2016. The actual diagnosis came in April 2016. Close, but not exact. It was as if the future was shifting slightly, details changing while the general outline remained similar. But the major global events never happened. September 12th, 2015 came and went with no stock market crash. 2018 saw no H7N9 pandemic originating in Thailand. May 22nd, 2022 was completely uneventful in California. Every major prediction failed. Then came the final email on October 3rd, 2019. It was brief and absolutely chilling. After that, nothing. No more emails. Robert waited months, years. But his future self never made contact again. Cybersecurity experts who've examined the emails can't explain them. The routing is genuine. There's no evidence of hacking or external manipulation. Some believe Robert created an elaborate hoax, perhaps using advanced programming to fool even experts. But why? He never sought fame or money from this. He only shared it with close friends and researchers. Others think Robert may have actually been in contact with a parallel timeline version of himself, and when that timeline diverged too far from ours, the connection broke. Pretty fascinating, right? So, what do you think? Did Robert Finch really receive messages from a future version of himself that was then erased? Is it possible that our future selves are trying to contact us right now, but we're living in a different timeline than the one they're sending messages from? And if a future can be deleted so completely that even the person living in it ceases to exist, what does that say about the stability of our own tomorrow? Absolutely terrifying when you think about it. Are you ready for an escalation? Then pay close attention now, because this case combines ancient mysteries with time travel in a way that will seriously mess with your mind. In 1999, Dr. Elena Kowalski, a Polish archaeologist, was excavating a medieval site near Krakow when her team uncovered something that absolutely should not exist. Buried beneath 13th century foundations, they found a metal box with a vacuum seal, a technology that shouldn't exist in medieval times. Inside was a collection of photographs printed on glossy paper with digital timestamps, showing scenes from the year 2043. The photos depicted the same archaeological site, but in the future. One image showed Dr. Kowalski herself, visibly older, standing at the exact same excavation with completely different structures unearthed. Another showed a massive crystal formation that her future team had apparently discovered 30 meters below the current dig site. Each photograph had handwritten notes on the back in Elena's own handwriting, which she confirmed was identical to hers, giving specific coordinates and instructions. Dig here on June 7th, 2043. The crystal is the key. Here's where it gets absolutely insane. Dr. Kowalski kept the photographs and continued her work. Over the years, she occasionally visited the site, waiting to see if this future would come to pass. But when June 7th, 2043 arrived, she wasn't there. She had retired in 2038 due to health problems. The site had been sold to developers and turned into a shopping complex. No crystal was ever found. The future shown in those photographs never existed. So, who buried that box in the 13th century? How did it contain photographs of a future that would never happen? And perhaps most disturbing, if those photos were wrong about 2043, does that mean someone or something changed the timeline after those images were created? Doctor? Elena Kowalski was a respected archaeologist from the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, specializing in medieval European settlements. In the summer of 1999, she was leading an excavation at a site in the village of Nowa Huta, about 10 kilometers from the city center. They were investigating what they believed to be the foundations of a 13th century monastery that had been destroyed during the Mongol invasions of 1241. Standard historical work, nothing unusual expected. The discovery happened on August 19, 1999. One of Dr. Kowalski's graduate students, Marek Nowak, was carefully excavating a section beneath what appeared to be the monastery's foundation stones when his trowel struck something metallic. At first, they assumed it was a medieval artifact, perhaps a reliquary or storage container. But when they carefully unearthed it, everyone froze. The box was made of stainless steel, a material that didn't exist in the 13th century, and it had a rubber gasket seal, clearly designed to create a vacuum. Think about how impossible this is. They were digging through undisturbed archaeological layers that had been sealed for over 700 years. There was absolutely no evidence of any later intrusion or disturbance. The box was embedded in soil that carbon dating confirmed was from the 13th century. Yet the box itself was obviously modern, or even futuristic. When Dr. Kowalski carefully opened the seal, releasing a faint hiss of air, the team discovered 6 glossy photographs inside, the kind printed on photo paper you'd get from a digital printer. Each photo had a timestamp in the bottom right corner, June 7th, 2043. The images showed the exact same excavation site, but transformed, modern equipment, different structures, partially excavated, and in 3 of the photos, Dr. Kowalski herself, clearly aged by several decades, wearing modern archaeological gear and standing among her team. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. Dr. Kowalski immediately recognized her own handwriting on the back of each photograph. Not similar handwriting, not a forgery. Her exact writing style, including the specific way she formed her capital Ks and the unusual slant of her Es, things that would be nearly impossible to replicate. The notes were instructions, GPS coordinates, excavation depths, and one phrase repeated on multiple photos. Quote 14. One photograph showed what appeared to be a massive translucent formation, roughly 3 meters tall, emerging from a deep excavation pit. The notes on the back gave specific coordinates and a depth of 32 meters below the current surface. Dr. Kowalski later admitted in interviews that she was absolutely convinced these were genuine photographs from her future, and that she had somehow sent them back in time to her younger self. She kept the photographs secure and told only a few trusted colleagues. Over the following decades, she continued her archaeological work, always keeping the site in mind. She even attempted several times to get funding for deeper excavations at Nowa Huta, but bureaucratic and financial obstacles prevented it. In 2038, Dr. Kowalski retired at age 72 due to advancing arthritis that made fieldwork impossible. Then came 2043. Dr. Kowalski, now 77, learned that the Nowa Huta site had been sold to commercial developers the previous year. The land was cleared and construction began on a shopping mall. No archaeological team was present. No deeper excavation occurred. June 7, 2043 passed without incident. The future shown in those photographs simply never happened. Materials scientists who examined the box confirmed it was made of modern stainless steel, manufactured sometime after 1950, using techniques that absolutely did not exist in medieval times. Photography experts analyzed the images and confirmed they were genuine chemical prints, not digital manipulations or composite forgeries. The paper stock matched materials available in the early 2000s, but the timestamp claimed they were from 2043. Pretty insane, right? Some researchers believe this is evidence of a closed time loop that failed, a future that sent evidence of itself backward but then ceased to exist. Others think the photographs came from a parallel timeline where Dr. Kowalski did continue excavating and did discover something extraordinary, but in our timeline, different decisions led to a different outcome. The most disturbing theory is that someone from the future deliberately buried those photographs in the 13th century to guide events. But something changed. and the timeline they were trying to create was erased. To this day, Dr. Elena Kowalski, now in her late 70s, still has the photographs and the metal box secured in a private collection. She's given several interviews over the years, always maintaining that the handwriting is genuinely hers and that she believes she somehow sent those images back from a future that will now never exist. Extremely creepy when you think about it. So, what do you think? Did Dr. Kowalski's future self really bury photographs in the 13th century? How is that even possible? And if those photos showed a future that was then erased, does that mean time travelers can accidentally create evidence of timelines that disappear? What if there are other buried artifacts right now, waiting to be found, showing us futures we'll never experience? And perhaps most terrifying, if someone went back to the 13th century to plant those photos, what happened to that person when their timeline ceased to exist? Absolutely mind-bending, isn't it? This case is deeply disturbing because it involves military records, psychological evaluations, and a war veteran who has perfect memories of a conflict that never occurred. In 2009, a former U.S. Army sergeant named Marcus Webb sought treatment at a VA hospital for what doctors initially diagnosed as severe PTSD. But Marcus wasn't suffering from memories of Iraq or Afghanistan, where he'd actually served. He had complete, detailed memories of fighting in a Third World War that had taken place from 2019 to 2023. He described battles in Eastern Europe, a nuclear exchange that destroyed several cities, specific weapon systems that didn't exist, and the deaths of fellow soldiers whose names he could recite from memory. His therapists assumed these were elaborate false memories or some kind of dissociative disorder. But Marcus's descriptions were far too detailed and consistent. He could draw maps of battlefields, describe military tactics, even recall serial numbers of equipment he claimed to have used. He underwent years of treatment, and his story never changed. He insisted that he had lived through those years, fought in that war, and then somehow, quote 15 back in 2009, with memories of a future that no one else remembered. Then 2019 arrived. The year Marcus claimed the war began. Nothing happened. 2023 came and went peacefully. The war Marcus remembered in excruciating detail never occurred. Medical scans showed unusual activity in the parts of Marcus's brain associated with genuine memory, not imagination. Every psychological test indicated he truly believed he had experienced these events. So, how does someone have perfect, consistent memories of 4 years of their life that never happened? Researchers who studied his case believe Marcus may have somehow accessed memories from a parallel timeline, a version of Earth where that war did occur, and for reasons we cannot understand, his consciousness retained those memories even after the timeline diverged. Marcus Webb was a decorated Army sergeant who had served 2 tours in Iraq between 2004 and 2007. He returned home with minor PTSD symptoms, nothing unusual for combat veterans, and was receiving standard counseling. But in March 2009, something changed. Marcus arrived at the VA Medical Center in Minneapolis in severe distress, claiming he had memories of a war that he knew logically couldn't have happened, but felt absolutely real. Imagine having complete memories of 4 years of combat experience that nobody else remembers. That's what Marcus was dealing with. His therapist, Dr. Jennifer Callahan, initially thought he was experiencing dissociative episodes or trauma-induced hallucinations. But as Marcus described his memories over multiple sessions, she became increasingly disturbed by the level of detail and consistency. Marcus claimed the war began on February 9, 2019, when Russian forces invaded Poland in response to NATO expansion. He remembered being deployed to Lithuania as part of the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division. He could name his commanding officers, Captain Ryan Morrison and Lieutenant Jennifer Torres. He could describe specific engagements, like the Battle of Vilnius on March 22, 2019, where his unit held a bridge against advancing armor for 17 hours. He remembered the weapon he carried, an M4A7 carbine with serial number 7723941, a designation that doesn't exist in any current military inventory. Now, here's where it gets absolutely insane. Marcus didn't just have vague memories of combat. He had complete, detailed recollections of 4 years of his life. He remembered writing letters home to his wife Sarah, though in our timeline, he's never been married. He remembered the birth of his daughter Emma in 2020, an event that never occurred. He remembered being wounded twice, once by shrapnel in Ukraine and once by a sniper in Belarus, and he could point to exact locations on his body where the scars should be, even though his skin was completely unmarked. The nuclear exchange he described happened on August 4th, 2021. He claimed tactical nuclear weapons were used in 3 locations: Warsaw, Minsk, and Kiev, killing millions. He described the aftermath, the radiation sickness among civilians, the breakdown of supply lines, the desperate fighting that continued for another 2 years until a ceasefire in late 2023. He could recall the exact wording of news broadcasts, the names of political leaders who negotiated the peace treaty, even specific weather conditions during key battles. Dr. Callahan was so disturbed by the consistency of Marcus's memories that she requested advanced neurological testing. The results froze everyone's blood cold. fMRI scans showed that when Marcus recalled these war memories, his brain lit up in exactly the same patterns as when veterans recall genuine combat experiences. The hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal cortex all showed activity consistent with accessing real memories, not imagination or confabulation. He was remembering these events the same way you would remember what you had for breakfast this morning. Psychological evaluations confirmed he showed no signs of schizophrenia, psychosis, or any condition that would cause elaborate false memories. He passed every cognitive test. He could distinguish between his real service in Iraq and these impossible memories of the future war. He knew logically that the war couldn't have happened, but the memories felt identical to his genuine experiences. Pretty disturbing, right? As the years passed, Marcus waited with increasing anxiety for 2019 to arrive. When February 9th, 2019 came and went peacefully, he experienced both relief and profound confusion. No invasion, no war. The timeline he remembered in perfect detail simply never occurred. 2023 arrived, the year the war supposedly ended and Earth remained at peace. Some neuroscientists believe Marcus may have experienced a rare form of temporal consciousness displacement, where his mind somehow accessed memories from a parallel timeline. Others think he might be suffering from an unknown neurological condition that creates impossibly detailed false memories. But neither explanation accounts for the brain scans or the consistency of his story over more than a decade of observation. To this day, Marcus Webb maintains that he genuinely lived through that war, fought in those battles, and lost friends whose names he still remembers. He attends therapy regularly and has learned to live with memories of a life that never existed in our timeline. Extremely creepy when you think about it. So, what do you think? Did Marcus Webb's consciousness somehow slip into a parallel timeline where World War III actually occurred? Is it possible for someone to carry perfect memories from an alternate version of reality? And if Marcus remembers a war that was erased from our timeline, how many other people might be walking around with memories of futures or pasts that never happened in our version of Earth? What if every moment reality branches into multiple possibilities, and sometimes consciousness accidentally carries memories across those branches? Absolutely terrifying, isn't it? If you already have chills now, hold on, because the next case is even more terrifying. In 2004, Dr. Raymond Chen, a theoretical physicist working at CERN in Switzerland, made a discovery that allegedly caused his immediate dismissal and the classification of his research. Dr. Chen had been working on quantum probability calculations, essentially trying to mathematically predict future states of particle interactions. But according to leaked documents and interviews Chen gave years later, he discovered something far more disturbing. His calculations kept producing a specific date, March 15, 2027, and a specific event, a massive energy anomaly originating from CERN itself that would, according to his mathematics, fundamentally alter the structure of space-time in our region of the universe. Chen's equations were apparently so precise that he could describe exactly what would happen minute by minute on that date. A catastrophic failure during a particle collision experiment, a brief formation of a microscopic black hole, and a shockwave of exotic particles that would spread outward at the speed of light. His calculations indicated this would create what he called a timeline reset, essentially rebooting reality from that moment forward. Chen reported his findings to his superiors, but instead of investigating, they confiscated all his research and terminated his position. He managed to smuggle out copies of his work and has spent the last 2 decades warning anyone who will listen. But here's the deeply unsettling part. As we get closer to March 15th, 2027, Chen claims his calculations are changing. The mathematics no longer points to that date with certainty. It's as if the future is actively rewriting itself, and the catastrophe he calculated is being erased from the timeline before it even happens. Chen believes someone or something is manipulating quantum probability itself, deliberately altering the future to prevent the disaster he predicted. If he's right, then we're living in a timeline that is being actively edited, and none of us would ever know. Dr. Raymond Chen was a brilliant theoretical physicist who joined CERN's research team in 2002, specializing in quantum mechanics and probability theory. His work focused on predicting the behavior of subatomic particles during high-energy collisions in the Large Hadron Collider. Think of it like trying to predict exactly where 1,000 billiard balls will end up after you break them, except at the quantum level, where particles don't follow normal physics. Absolutely insane work, right? In early 2004, Chen was developing advanced mathematical models to predict particle decay patterns. He was using something called quantum probability matrices, essentially complex equations that calculate all possible outcomes of a quantum event and assign likelihood to each one. But when he ran his calculations forward, projecting future states of particle interactions planned at CERN, something bizarre started happening. The equations kept converging on one specific date, March 15, 2027, at 14:43 hours Central European Time. At first, Chen thought it was a computational error, some bug in his code, or a mistake in his mathematics. But after months of checking and rechecking, he realized the calculations were correct. According to his models, on that exact date and time, a planned particle collision experiment at CERN would go catastrophically wrong. The math showed that a specific combination of particle energies and collision angles would create an unstable quantum state, briefly forming what physicists call a micro black hole, an infinitesimally small but incredibly dense point in space-time. Now, here's where it gets truly terrifying. Chen's calculations showed that this micro black hole wouldn't just evaporate as theory predicted. Instead, it would create what he called a, quote, 17, where the normal rules of quantum mechanics would temporarily break down. The result would be a wave of exotic particles, types of matter that don't normally exist in our universe, spreading outward from CERN at the speed of light. And according to his mathematics, this wave would fundamentally rewrite the quantum state of everything it touched. Think about what that means. Chen was predicting that reality itself would be reset, rebooted from that moment forward, not destroyed, but altered at the most fundamental level. He could even calculate specifics. The shockwave would reach the outer solar system in approximately 4 hours. It would reach the nearest stars in 4.2 years. And everywhere it passed, the timeline would be rewritten, creating what he called a new quantum baseline for reality. Chen presented his findings to CERN's Safety Committee on July 9, 2004. According to interviews he gave years later, the response was immediate and severe. Within 48 hours, all his research was classified. His access to CERN systems was revoked. And on July 14th, he was officially terminated for what the organization called, yes, quote, 19. His office was cleaned out, his hard drives confiscated, and he was escorted from the facility. But Chen had already copied his calculations to encrypted servers and personal storage. He's spent the past 20 years trying to warn the scientific community, publishing papers in fringe journals and giving interviews to anyone who will listen. Most physicists dismiss his work as pseudoscience or mathematical errors, but some who've examined his equations privately admit they can't find the flaw in his logic. Pretty disturbing, right? Now, here's where it gets even more unsettling. Chen claims that when he runs his calculations now, in 2025, the results are different. The convergence on March 15th, 2027 is weakening. The probability of the catastrophic event is decreasing. It's as if the future is being actively changed, and the disaster he calculated is being erased before it happens. He believes this isn't natural. Someone or something with access to quantum probability is manipulating the timeline, deliberately preventing the catastrophe. Some quantum physicists who've studied Chen's work believe he may have stumbled onto something real. The mathematical signature of timeline editing. Others think his changing calculations simply reflect normal quantum uncertainty. But Chen insists the pattern is too precise to be random. The future is being deliberately rewritten. To this day, Dr. Raymond Chen continues monitoring his equations as March 15th. 2027 approaches. Will the date pass without incident? Or will something happen that proves his calculations were right all along? Extremely creepy when you think about it. So, what do you think? Did Dr. Chen really calculate a future catastrophe that's now being erased? Is it possible that someone or something is actively editing our timeline to prevent disasters? And if the future can be changed through quantum manipulation, how many other catastrophes have been erased without us ever knowing they were coming? What if we're living in a timeline that's been edited hundreds of times and reality as we know it is just the latest version? Absolutely mind-bending and terrifying at the same time. And this is nothing compared to what you're about to hear. This case is so deeply strange and tragic that it's hard to even process. In 2001, a 7-year-old girl named Emma Patterson disappeared from her home in rural Scotland. Massive searches found nothing. Her family was devastated, and after years with no leads, most people assumed the worst. Then, in 2016, 15 years later, Emma was found walking down the same road where she'd disappeared. But she wasn't 22 years old, she was still 7. She hadn't aged a single day. When questioned, Emma had a story that shocked investigators and her family. She claimed she had lived an entire life. She remembered growing up, going to university, getting married, having children, growing old. She described decades of experiences, named people she'd met, places she'd lived, specific events from years that, according to our timeline, she'd never experienced. She had memories of being 35, 45, 60 years old. Medical examinations confirmed she was biologically 7 years old, but cognitive testing showed adult-level knowledge in certain areas. She could discuss historical events from the 2020s and 2030s in detail, things a 7-year-old couldn't possibly know. But when researchers checked her descriptions against actual history, nothing matched. The president she remembered from 2035 wasn't the actual president. The technology she described didn't exist. The personal life she recalled, her husband, her children, her career, none of it was real. It was as if Emma had somehow lived a complete lifetime in an alternate future, a future that then disappeared, and she was returned to the moment of her disappearance without having physically aged. Psychologists have no explanation for how a child could fabricate such detailed, consistent false memories. Emma herself, now still 7 years old, but carrying the mental experiences of a lifetime that never existed, struggles to reconcile who she is with who she remembers being. Emma Patterson vanished on June 23, 2001, from her family's farmhouse near the village of Killen in the Scottish Highlands. She had been playing in the front garden while her mother prepared dinner. Her mother stepped inside for less than 5 minutes, and when she came back out, Emma was gone. No scream, no sign of struggle, just an empty garden and a small pink bicycle lying on its side. The search was massive. Police, volunteers, search dogs, helicopters, everything you could imagine. They combed through thousands of acres of highland wilderness. They dredged nearby Loch Tay. They investigated every possible lead, every suspicious person in the area. But after months of intensive searching, they found absolutely nothing. No body, no clothing, no evidence of what happened to Emma Patterson. Her parents, David and Claire Patterson, never gave up hope, but as the years passed, most people assumed she had been abducted and killed. Then, on September 7, 2016, Exactly 15 years, 2 months, and 14 days after her disappearance, a farmer named Hugh MacLeod was driving along the same road near the Patterson farmhouse when he saw a small girl walking alone. She was wearing a pink dress, exactly the kind a child might have worn in 2001, and she appeared confused and disoriented. When MacLeod stopped and asked if she was okay, the girl said her name was Emma Patterson and she wanted to go home. Think about how absolutely insane this is. The police were called, and when they compared photos, they froze. The girl looked exactly like Emma Patterson had looked in 2001. Same face, same height, same everything. She was still 7 years old. She hadn't aged a single day in 15 years. DNA testing confirmed it. This was Emma Patterson. Biologically, medically, physically, she was still the same 7-year-old girl who had disappeared in 2001. But when she started talking, everyone realized something was impossibly wrong. Emma claimed she remembered everything, not just the day she disappeared, but decades beyond it. She remembered her 8th birthday party, which never happened in our timeline. She remembered attending primary school, secondary school, and then the University of Edinburgh, where she studied marine biology. She described meeting a man named Thomas Reinhardt in 2022, falling in love, and marrying him in 2025. She had detailed memories of giving birth to 2 children, a son named James in 2027 and a daughter named Claire in 2030. She remembered her career as a marine researcher, specific projects she worked on, conferences she attended. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. Emma could describe historical events from the 2000s and 20s and 30s with remarkable detail. She talked about a major climate summit in Geneva in 2029. She described technological advances, new forms of renewable energy, even specific news stories she claimed to have watched. Her vocabulary, her manner of speaking, her emotional maturity, all of it was consistent with an adult woman in her 60s, not a 7-year-old child. Psychologists conducted extensive testing. Emma's cognitive abilities in certain areas were far beyond what any 7-year-old should possess. She could discuss complex scientific concepts, had detailed knowledge of geography and world events, and showed emotional depth that suggested real-life experience. But when researchers compared her memories to actual history, nothing matched. The Geneva Climate Summit she described never happened. The President of the United States she remembered from 2035 wasn't the person who actually held that office. The technology she described in such detail didn't exist. Her personal memories were even more heartbreaking. She remembered her children's faces, their voices, their personalities. She described her husband's death in 2053 and her own gradual aging. She claimed to remember being 68 years old, looking in the mirror and seeing an elderly woman. And then, she said, everything went dark, and when she opened her eyes, she was 7 again, walking down a road near her childhood home. Medical scans of Emma's brain showed unusual patterns. The areas associated with long-term memory formation were far more developed than they should be in a 7-year-old. It was as if her brain had actually formed decades of memories, even though her body had never aged. Pretty tragic, right? Some researchers believe Emma may have experienced what they call a timeline displacement, where her consciousness lived through an entire lifetime in an alternate future before being returned to our timeline at the moment of her disappearance. Others think she may have been caught in some kind of temporal loop, experiencing decades subjectively while no time passed in our reality. But neither theory explains the physical impossibility of her situation. To this day, Emma Patterson, still physically 7 years old, lives with her parents who are now much older than she remembers them being. She attends therapy regularly, struggling to reconcile the memories of a full adult life with the reality of being a child again. She mourns a husband who never existed, children who were never born, and a career she never had. Extremely heartbreaking and creepy at the same time. So, what do you think? Did Emma Patterson really live an entire lifetime in a future that was then erased? How is it possible for someone to have 60 years of memories compressed into 0 physical time? And if she experienced a complete life in an alternate timeline, does that mean her husband and children existed somewhere in some version of reality before that entire future disappeared? What if time isn't linear at all, and consciousness can experience entire lifetimes and timelines that never solidify into our reality? Absolutely devastating and fascinating at the same time, isn't it? Totally fascinating, but the next case puts everything you've heard so far completely in the shadows. In 2013, a security company in Singapore discovered something impossible in their archives. They were reviewing old footage from a client's building when they found a recording dated June 4th, 2018, 5 years in the future. At first, they assumed it was a labeling error, but when they examined the footage closely, they realized it couldn't be explained that simply. The recording showed the building's lobby exactly as it looked in 2013, but with small differences. A potted plant in a different location, a new desk where a couch used to be. And most significantly, it showed people the security team recognized, employees of the company, but they looked older and were wearing clothes consistent with future fashion trends. The timestamp was clear, June 4th, 2018, 11:37 a.m. The security company kept the footage and waited. As June 4th, 2018 approached, they prepared to see if the recording would match reality. They even positioned cameras to capture the exact same angle, planning to compare them frame by frame. But when the date arrived, nothing matched. The lobby looked completely different. A renovation had occurred in 2017, changing the entire layout. The people shown in the mysterious footage from 2013 weren't even working at the company anymore. The future the security camera had somehow recorded never happened. Engineers examined the original footage and confirmed it was genuine, not edited or fabricated. The equipment showed no signs of malfunction. Somehow, a security camera in 2013 had recorded events from 2018. A version of 2018 that was then erased and replaced with a different timeline. The footage still exists in the security company's archives, a recording of a day that will never happen. The discovery was made by SecureWatch Asia, a private security firm that managed surveillance systems for dozens of office buildings throughout Singapore. On November 12, 2013, a technician named Daniel Koh was performing routine maintenance on their digital archive servers when he noticed something strange. One of the video files from the Meridian Tower, a 20-story office building in the Marina Bay Financial District, had a timestamp that didn't make sense. It was dated June 4, 2018, but they were currently in November 2013. At first, Koh assumed it was a simple computer glitch, maybe corrupted metadata or a system clock error, but when he opened the file to verify, he found himself watching what appeared to be legitimate security footage. The video showed the Meridian Tower's main lobby, captured from the standard ceiling-mounted camera angle they'd been using for years. Everything looked normal, except the timestamp in the corner clearly read June 4th, 2018, 11:37 a.m. Think about how bizarre this is. They were looking at security footage from 5 years in the future. Koh immediately called his supervisor, a man named Richard Tan, who'd been working in security systems for over 20 years. When Tan reviewed the footage, he recognized several employees who worked in the building. There was Janet Lim from the accounting firm on the 14th floor, looking noticeably older, her hair styled differently. There was Marcus Chen, a security guard they both knew personally, but his uniform was a slightly different color, and he appeared to have gained weight and aged several years. Now, here's where it gets absolutely insane. Tan and Koh started documenting every detail they could see in the footage. The lobby had subtle changes. The large potted palm tree near the entrance had been moved to the opposite corner. The reception desk had a new computer monitor, a flat-screen model that looked more modern than anything they had in 2013. There was even a small digital display on the wall showing news headlines, and they could make out partial text about events they'd never heard of. The security company made the decision to keep this footage completely confidential and wait. They couldn't go public with something so impossible without being labeled as frauds or incompetence. So they quietly documented everything, took detailed notes, and as June 4th, 2018 approached, they prepared to witness whether this mysterious future would actually occur. In the weeks leading up to June 4th, 2018, SecureWatch Asia installed additional cameras in the Meridian Tower lobby, positioning them at the exact same angle as the original camera. They wanted to be able to compare the footage frame by frame. They even created a checklist of specific details to verify. Would Janet Lim be wearing the blue blazer shown in the footage? Would the palm tree be in the corner? Would the news display show the same headlines? The date arrived and the security team gathered to watch. But from the very first minute, it was clear nothing was matching. The lobby looked completely different. A major renovation had been completed in late 2017, changing the entire floor plan. The reception area had been relocated. New lighting had been installed. The layout bore absolutely no resemblance to what the mysterious footage had shown. Even more disturbing, when they checked employee records, Janet Lim had resigned from her position in 2016 and moved to Australia. Marcus Chen had transferred to a different building in 2015. The people shown in the footage weren't even working at Meridian Tower anymore. The future that had been recorded in 2013 had been completely erased and replaced with a different timeline. Pretty creepy, right? Digital forensics experts were brought in to examine the footage under strict confidentiality agreements. Their analysis froze everyone's blood cold. The video file was genuine. No signs of digital manipulation, no evidence of editing or CGI. The metadata was consistent. The compression artifacts were normal, and the file creation date matched the original timestamp from 2013, according to every technical test. This was authentic security camera footage that had somehow recorded events from 5 years in the future. Electronics engineers examined the camera system itself. The hardware showed no anomalies, no unusual electromagnetic readings, nothing that would explain how it could capture future events. Some theorized it might have been a quantum fluctuation, a brief moment where the camera's sensors somehow accessed a future probability state. Others suggested it could have been a temporal echo, where information from a possible future leaked backward through time. To this day, SecureWatch Asia maintains the footage in their secure archives. Company executives have shown it to select researchers and physicists under non-disclosure agreements, but they have never publicly released it. The video remains one of the most baffling pieces of evidence that the future might not be as fixed as we think. Extremely unsettling when you really think about it. So what do you think? Did that security camera really record a future that was then erased? Is it possible that surveillance systems, which are constantly recording time, might occasionally glimpse timelines that will never actually happen? And if the future shown in that footage was replaced with a different timeline, what caused the change? Was it natural probability, or did something deliberately alter the course of events between 2013 and 2018? What if security cameras around the world are occasionally recording futures that get deleted, and we just never notice because we're not looking? Absolutely mind-bending, isn't it? This case is definitely going to surprise you, and it's never been widely publicized because of how terrifying the implications are. In 2007, a CDC researcher named Dr. Sarah Morrison began having extremely vivid and specific visions of a global pandemic. But these weren't vague fears or anxiety dreams. She was experiencing what she described as memories from 2013, complete with exact dates, infection rates, and the specific pathogen responsible. Sarah documented everything in a private journal and in confidential reports to her superiors. She described a coronavirus variant that would emerge in November 2013, originating in bats in Southeast Asia, with specific transmission characteristics and mortality rates. She even drew the molecular structure of the virus and outlined containment strategies she, quote, 21, quote, using. Her supervisors were concerned and monitored her mental health, but Sarah was insistent and credible. As 2013 approached, she became increasingly agitated, warning that the outbreak would begin in the 3rd week of November. She named the specific region, the initial vector, and the first human cases. November 2013 came. Nothing happened. No pandemic emerged. No coronavirus outbreak occurred. Sarah's detailed memories were completely wrong. She was placed on medical leave and eventually resigned from the CDC. But here's what makes this case absolutely chilling. In late 2019, a new coronavirus did emerge from Southeast Asia. COVID-19. And when researchers compared the virus to Sarah's notes from 2007, there were similarities, but the timeline was 6 years later than she'd predicted, and many specific details were different. Some researchers believe Sarah had somehow accessed memories of a pandemic that was supposed to occur in 2013. But something changed the timeline, delaying it until 2019 and altering its characteristics. Others believe she witnessed a version of history where COVID emerged earlier and differently, a timeline that was then replaced with ours. Either way, Dr. Sarah Morrison had detailed memories of a global health crisis that never happened when and how she remembered it. As if the future itself had been rewritten. Dr. Sarah Morrison was a respected epidemiologist who had worked for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention since 2003. She specialized in emerging infectious diseases and had a particular focus on zoonotic viruses, diseases that jump from animals to humans. Her background was impeccable, her research was solid, and absolutely no one who knew her would have described her as prone to delusions or mental instability. That's what made what happened in 2007 so disturbing. It started on March 27, 2007. Sarah woke up with what she later described as complete memories of living through a global pandemic in 2013. Not predictions or hunches, but actual detailed memories as clear as anything else in her life. She remembered the virus emerging in Guangdong Province, China, in mid-November 2013. She remembered the initial cases being dismissed as seasonal flu, before doctors realized they were dealing with something far more deadly. She even remembered the specific hospital in Guangzhou where the first cluster was identified. Think about how absolutely insane this must have been for her. She was a scientist, trained to rely on data and evidence, suddenly having vivid memories of events that hadn't happened yet. But these weren't vague impressions. Sarah could describe the virus at a molecular level. She drew detailed diagrams of its spike proteins, its RNA structure, its mutation patterns. She described a reproduction rate of approximately 3.5, meaning each infected person would spread it to 3 to 4 others. She outlined containment protocols, quarantine procedures, and treatment strategies she remembered implementing. Sarah did exactly what any responsible CDC researcher would do. She documented everything in confidential reports to her supervisors, dating each entry and maintaining meticulous records. She described the pandemic's progression week by week. First cases in late November 2013. International spread by mid-December. WHO pandemic declaration in January 2014. She estimated global deaths would reach approximately 2 million by the end of 2014 before vaccines and treatments brought it under control. Her supervisors were deeply concerned, but also confused. Sarah was clearly experiencing something unusual. But she showed no other signs of mental illness. She continued performing her regular work flawlessly. Psychological evaluations found her completely rational, except for these specific, quote, 23 quote of a future pandemic. So they monitored her, documented her claims, and waited to see what would happen. As 2013 approached, Sarah became increasingly anxious. She kept warning her colleagues that November would be critical. She even requested that the CDC increase surveillance of respiratory illnesses in southern China, specifically in Guangdong Province. But when November 2013 arrived, nothing happened. No unusual respiratory illness clusters, no coronavirus outbreak. The specific hospital she'd named reported normal seasonal flu cases and nothing more. December came and went. January 2014 passed. The pandemic Sarah had remembered in such excruciating detail never occurred. She was placed on medical leave in March 2014, and after months of psychiatric evaluation, she resigned from the CDC later that year. Her colleagues assumed she'd suffered some kind of stress-induced breakdown, and the whole incident was quietly buried in confidential files. Then came late 2019. A novel coronavirus emerged, and as it spread globally, becoming the COVID-19 pandemic we all remember, some researchers who knew about Sarah's case went back to her old reports. What they found sent chills down their spines. There were similarities. The virus was indeed a coronavirus. It did originate in a region associated with bat populations in Asia. The basic molecular structure Sarah had drawn in 2007 showed some similarities to SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. But the timeline was wrong, 6 years off, and many specific details were different. The reproduction rate was different. The mortality patterns were different. The exact geographic origin didn't match. It was as if Sarah had accessed memories of a pandemic that was similar to COVID-19, but not identical. A pandemic that was scheduled for 2013, but somehow got delayed and altered before finally emerging in 2019. Pretty disturbing, right? Researchers who've studied Sarah's case believe she may have experienced precognitive memories from a timeline that was then changed. What if the pandemic was supposed to happen in 2013, but something altered the course of events, delaying it by 6 years and changing its characteristics? Some virologists have even speculated that natural viral evolution or human intervention might have temporarily prevented the emergence of the pathogen, only for a similar but not identical virus to emerge later. To this day, Dr. Sarah Morrison, who now works in private medical research, maintains that her memories from 2007 were genuine. She insists she lived through a 2013 pandemic that never happened in our timeline, and that COVID-19, while similar, is not the same event she remembered. She believes the timeline was altered, either naturally or deliberately, shifting the pandemic by 6 years and changing its nature. Extremely creepy when you think about it. So, what do you think? Did Dr. Morrison really remember a pandemic from a timeline that was erased? Is it possible that COVID-19 was supposed to happen in 2013, but something changed the future, delaying it until 2019? And if that's true, what caused the timeline to shift? Was it natural probability, or did someone or something deliberately alter the course of events? What if there are other global catastrophes scheduled for specific dates that are being constantly delayed or prevented by changes to the timeline? Absolutely fascinating and terrifying at the same time, isn't it? Ready for the finale? Then pay close attention now, because this case is by far the most disturbing and well-documented account of someone returning from a future that was completely erased. In 2012, a man appeared at a hospital in Geneva, Switzerland, suffering from severe radiation poisoning, dehydration, and psychological trauma. He was approximately 40 years old, but he carried no identification and initially couldn't remember his own name. When he finally began to speak, he told a story that psychiatric evaluators initially dismissed as a delusion, but later found impossible to explain. The man, who eventually identified himself as Daniel Moss, claimed that he was from the year 2041 and had lived through the complete collapse of human civilization. He described a cascading series of catastrophes beginning in 2028, with simultaneous crop failures across multiple continents. He remembered the resource wars that followed, the breakdown of governments, the nuclear exchanges in 2033, and the slow extinction of humanity over the following 8 years. His descriptions were extraordinarily detailed. He could name specific dates when cities fell, describe the mutations of diseases that spread through the remaining population, and recount the formation of survivor groups he'd been part of. He had scars consistent with his stories, including radiation burns and injuries from the conflicts he described. Medical analysis confirmed his wounds were real, not self-inflicted, and showed exposure to radiation types that would require specialized equipment to produce. Daniel spent months in psychiatric care, undergoing every possible evaluation. His story never changed. He insisted that in 2041, while scavenging in the ruins of what was once Geneva, he'd found a research facility where scientists had been working on a temporal device. Desperate and dying, he'd activated it, and somehow found himself transported back to 2012. His mission, he said, was to warn humanity about the specific sequence of events that would lead to extinction. He gave precise warnings, dates of critical decision points, names of political leaders who would make catastrophic choices, technological developments that needed to be prevented. Everything was documented. Researchers and journalists took note of his predictions. Then 2028 arrived. The crop failures he'd described never happened. 2033 came, no nuclear war. Every specific event Daniel had remembered from his future failed to occur. By 2041, the apocalypse he'd lived through was completely absent. The world looked nothing like the wasteland he'd described. Daniel Moss was eventually released from psychiatric care in 2019, and he simply disappeared. Some believe he realized his warnings had worked, that by revealing the future, he'd changed it. Others think his presence in 2012, a man from a doomed timeline, somehow created a divergence that replaced his future with ours. But perhaps the most terrifying theory is this: what if Daniel didn't change the future? What if he came from a timeline that was erased and replaced, and we're now living in the replacement? What if there are other people right now, carrying memories of futures that will never exist, futures that are being deleted and overwritten? What if our timeline isn't the original at all, but just one version in an endless series of edits and rewrites? And if that's true, then everything we think we know about tomorrow could vanish and be replaced without us ever knowing it happened. A thought that is as fascinating as it is absolutely terrifying. Daniel Moss was found collapsed outside the emergency entrance of Geneva University Hospital on August 7, 2012, at approximately 3:20 a.m. Security footage shows him stumbling toward the doors, wearing tattered clothing that appeared to be makeshift protective gear, before collapsing unconscious. The overnight ER physician, Dr. Laurent Mercier, later described his condition as unlike anything he'd seen in 20 years of emergency medicine. Daniel was emaciated, dehydrated, and covered in burns and scars. But what shocked the medical team was the radiation poisoning. Geiger counter readings showed he'd been exposed to significant levels of ionizing radiation, the kind typically associated with nuclear accidents or weapons. His symptoms included severe burns on his arms and chest, hair loss, and blood markers indicating acute radiation syndrome. Think about how impossible this is. How does someone in peaceful Geneva in 2012 get exposed to radiation levels consistent with a nuclear disaster? When Daniel regained consciousness 3 days later, he was disoriented and terrified. He kept asking what year it was, and when doctors told him it was 2012, he broke down crying. Over the following weeks, as he recovered physically, he began telling his story. At first, psychiatric staff assumed it was trauma-induced delusion, but the level of detail was absolutely staggering. Daniel described the collapse beginning on June 3, 2028, when simultaneous crop failures hit North America, Europe, and Asia due to what he called a stage quote, and 24. Bee populations and other pollinating insects collapsed within weeks, devastating global food production. He remembered the panic, the food riots, the breakdown of supply chains. By 2029, he said, governments were collapsing as people fought over resources. The resource wars started in 2030, when multiple nations invaded agricultural regions to secure food supplies. Daniel could name specific battles: the siege of Kiev in April 2031, the fall of Delhi in September 2032. He described being conscripted into what remained of the Swiss defense forces, fighting in the Alpine passes to keep refugee columns from overwhelming the last stable regions. Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. Daniel described the nuclear exchange with terrifying precision. October 14th, 2033, 3:15 p.m. Central European Time. He claimed Pakistan launched first in a desperate attempt to secure water resources, followed by retaliatory strikes from India. Within 48 hours, 14 cities had been destroyed: Moscow, Beijing, Los Angeles, Tehran, and others. He could describe the sky turning red, the ash clouds that blocked the sun for months, the nuclear winter that followed. Medical examinations confirmed his radiation burns were genuine and showed exposure to specific isotopes, cesium-137 and strontium-90, that are signatures of nuclear fission. Forensic pathologists found healed fractures consistent with blast injuries and malnutrition patterns indicating years of inadequate nutrition. These weren't self-inflicted wounds. They were the accumulated damage of someone who'd survived extreme conditions for years. Pretty chilling, right? Daniel claimed that by 2041, fewer than 50 million humans remained alive globally. He'd been surviving in the ruins of Geneva, scavenging for food and avoiding the radiation zones, when he discovered an underground CERN facility that had somehow remained intact. Inside, he found the bodies of scientists and a machine they'd been working on, a temporal displacement device. Desperate, dying from radiation sickness, and with nothing to lose, he activated it. The next thing he remembered was waking up in 2012. Researchers documented his warnings meticulously. He provided specific dates and events. June 3, 2028, monitor pollinator populations globally. March 2030, prevent the water resource conflict protocol from being signed. October 2033, absolutely critical nuclear de-escalation required. Everything was recorded, time-stamped, witnessed. Then the years passed. June 3, 2028 arrived. Pollinator populations were stable. No collapse occurred. 2033 came and went without nuclear war. Every single event Daniel had lived through in excruciating detail simply never happened. The future he remembered was completely absent. In 2019, Daniel Moss was released from psychiatric observation. He'd shown no signs of mental illness other than his, quote, 25 bulls about the future, and legally, they couldn't hold him. Within weeks of his release, he vanished. No trace, no records of where he went. Some researchers believe he realized his warnings had succeeded and chose to disappear. Others think something else happened to him. To this day, absolutely no one can explain Daniel Moss. The radiation exposure was real. The injuries were real. The consistency of his story over 7 years of observation was remarkable. Yet the future he described never occurred. Extremely fascinating and deeply unsettling. So, what do you think? Did Daniel Moss really travel from an apocalyptic future that was then erased? Did his warnings actually change the timeline? Or was his future replaced by ours for completely different reasons? And here's the most terrifying question of all. What if we're not living in the original timeline? What if the apocalypse Daniel described was supposed to happen, and we're now living in a replacement timeline, an edited version of reality created to prevent that catastrophe? If that's true, how many times has our timeline been rewritten? How many futures have been deleted and replaced? And are there other people right now, walking among us, carrying memories of timelines that no longer exist, futures that were erased before they could happen? What if reality itself is constantly being edited, and the only evidence is people like Daniel Moss who somehow slip through the cracks carrying impossible memories? Absolutely mind-blowing and terrifying, isn't it?